Having designed and built over $50 million worth of high-end residential projects from the ground up, Mario's vision and expertise is pushing the envelope of the built environment. Please welcome innovator Mario Romano.
Right. Thank you very much. It's a big pleasure to be here. And I want to start off by saying I really love builders and people that make objects, whether they're houses or they're countertops or anything in between. So, because there's something very universal about making, and that it translates language and culture, and because it's based in science. So the techniques and skills and things that people are doing across the globe, we can really communicate internationally. And so I'm going to start off by showing you this right here, which is a facade, rain screen facade, using solid surface. How do you start off with these things? Well, you've got to have an idea and kind of a vision. And really the material of solid surface is really incredible in so many ways because of the continuity without any interruption. And I'll show you right there, that corner right there, where it's thermoformed around the corner, right? That proposed a set of challenges, right? Because how are we going to thermoform it, right? Well, we didn't have an oven at the time. And I thought about bringing an oven to the site, right, or making forms and doing all that stuff. But then I looked at the side of the building, and the side of the building was the form. So let's just go ahead and bring a heating unit right there. And right where that chair is, I decided to put a barbecue, okay? And so we took a barbecue, and I said, what happens if we put it in the barbecue and heat it up? It gets to 300 degrees, and then we could just hoist it up and wrap it around the corner. And that's exactly what we did, right? Now, barbecues probably don't fall under any specifications anywhere, but I figured 300 degrees is 300 degrees, regardless of where it came from. So finding unique and creative strategies to solve problems, as well as how do you express, because the material really is super expressive. And all right, this is my CNC machine, right? And it started off, I think someone was asking me about how I started off in this, and I wanted to be able to express line work and a vision of texture going on and on and on without any interruption or without any format of, let's say, the limitations of a tile or a slab coming together and then how do you bond it. And I knew that solid surface would do that. So I kind of just jumped in, and I will tell you, it was hard to find. I invited some other kind of Korean fabricators and solid surface fabricators to come work with me, and it was hard. No one was very interested in it. So I just went ahead on my own and kept working. And I wrote here about CNC machine as an instrument, and a lot of us are embracing CNC machine. We're moving towards those, whether it's some form of low-level robotics, and they really are instruments and super expressive. Okay, great. And this is me, just in a garage, right? It's actually my garage, and doing kind of like the first rounds of experimentation, and that was almost about 4 years ago, right there. Lots of research, lots of testing, lots of failures, and experiments. And part of the language that I wanted to create, right? So super large scale without any interruption. And this is, let's say it's 20 feet by 12 feet or something like that, right? But without any interruption, and it's all continuous. That's the kind of design expression that I wanted to have, but at the same time I knew it had to be installable, and it had to be able to communicate to the installers and the fabricators and the makers of the world. Otherwise, things just end up in your computer, or end up on a sheet of paper, or end up on Pinterest, right? And as we all know, we can't build to Pinterest, even though I'm sure a lot of people wish they could, okay? And we get these images, but then how do you actually realize it? So you have to have some logic, and assembly logic and installation logic underneath all of this. And I was starting to think about, famous builders and makers and fabricators, and I really couldn't think of any because they're not always very appreciated. We could probably name some designers and architects and famous buildings, but actually the name or the brands behind this. So I decided to do a little Google search here. Okay. And I Googled the word master builder, and I got a lot of cartoons. So. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us there's a lot of room to really go ahead and in this area of builder and maker to go ahead and communicate to people and not have it just be a bunch of digital cartoons, even though the Lego people are probably trying to capture this area, which gets into the marketing and ownership of certain brand words. Right? So I did a little bit more research, and I started saying, and Leonardo da Vinci came up as a maker and as a builder. And I thought it was very interesting. And I highlighted some of the words, right? And this is a letter that he wrote. And it talks about him constructing, talks about him, so I can make a cannon, and I can noiselessly construct to these subterranean passages, and I can make armored wagons, and I can supply, it's actually like kind of like a contract word, supply, right there. And he can construct many engines and construction of buildings. And then right here, if any of these things seem impossible or impractical, no problem. I can make a trial or a mock-up, right? So he's proposing, hey, I'll do a mock-up, and I'll do it in any of your areas, your parks, and so on and so forth. So I thought that was very interesting, because if you look back, that's my backyard, right over there on the left. That's probably like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And this is kind of like the first introduction into digital fabrication, where I was wanting to work with metal and fins. And if you notice on that image on the left, I learned something very quickly. That if you don't label and etch the pieces, you're going to spend more time identifying which piece goes where than you will actually making the entire object. So, immediately. So we had to sift through all these random pieces. Even though we had a map and a printout, it's very hard to identify any one of those shapes. And then how do you communicate with somebody? Okay, pass me the bonito, something that looked like a fish, or another, we describe them as fish types. Anyway, so I made a shack in the backyard, and then I decided to go ahead and build it. And this was a practice run, because I wanted to do this at a large scale for houses and for buildings, right? Okay, and then this kind of brings us towards the understanding of digital fabrication, because on the left, we have the digital world, which is a model, right? But it's a production-ready model with all the installation logic embedded within it. So every piece is labeled and etched, right? And then over there, you have the fabricated part. And if you notice, they're almost identical. And that's what's really remarkable, is in the digital fabricated world, is that what you see in the digital world will be replicated identically in the physical world, with the exception of possibly those corners right there. If you notice in the digital world, they were rolled in a particular geometry, and in the physical world, we got to be a little bit more expressive with them, right? But for all intents and purposes, it's the same. And back to the master builder, which was all there really was only 600 years ago, right? But if you look at Wikipedia, they don't really go on more than a single sentence describing what the master builder was. But he was the precursor to the modern architect and engineer. And I'm sure that all of us here as fabricators and makers, we end up doing a lot of the designing, engineering, and the making based on these ideas that are presented to us. And it encompasses a lot more work than I think we actually get credit for. So digital fabrication is akin to a master builder, who is both the designer and the maker. And it's very similar to a chef. Because a chef, he doesn't just write recipes and then other people do the cooking, right? He actually does the designing and the making, very often in real time, or he'll have set up recipes that he'll test and develop, and he'll actually will taste them, right? And then after that, he goes ahead and he makes them. So he's the designer and the maker, right? So less of a separation between those two disciplines. And then back to this Leonardo da Vinci, because he really was the only guy that came up when it came to, what famous builders and makers. They're saying that he's a marketing genius. I never thought about that. I never considered that. But we'll get into marketing, because it's very important to market. And how you can market, and the storytelling can go on. And for me, and I highly recommend, it's making weird things, interesting things, strange things, experiments, and then photographing them, and then documenting them, and not being shy to go ahead and show things as works in progress, right? Experiments, because it's a way of telling stories, and people are interested in this. They don't always want to see the finished product, we think that we need to present the finished product out there in the world. It's actually more interesting, we're finding out, that people want to see the process of how you actually got there and the story behind it as opposed to the end, right? And we get a book, we just don't skip to the end because all the books have the same ending, the end, right? We want to see the story and the process. So I really encourage that for all of us, and it feels sometimes very counterintuitive to do that, you know, and to personalize it, and to put people to it, right? Because people add scale, and if you notice, what I've learned a lot from posting lots of images is how people respond to the images, and having a person in them, sometimes you can't get a person. I know as fabricators, you're so busy making that you don't have time to really call a timeout and do a photography shoot, correct? You have to kind of like force yourself to do it and call a timeout and do that, and just grab anybody you can, even with a hand, just in the picture will really help tell the story. Here's some kind of like raw and crude pictures. These are experimentations of just simply painting. The material is, what could you do with it, right? So I wanted to know, what could you paint it, right? Has anyone ever painted Corian or solid surface before? Yeah, I mean, it takes the paint incredibly well. You know, there are lots of, I would say, secrets and trade secrets that people don't know about, and maybe you guys have done them and kept them, you know, in a secret vault somewhere. But it's very important, I think, to really kind of open up the language of building and making and share this experimentation, including the failed experiments and the pros and the cons. So I do that, and I said, okay, what happens if you paint it and then add texture, right? And then what if you wanted to use some type of robotic painting on top of the texture, and then here you have something incredibly complex where you have texture and paint on individual surfaces, and this is fully controllable in the digital world, and actually pretty reasonable to do it, very achievable. It's just a matter of the paint, right? And storytelling, you know, here, because as you start telling your stories and personalizing them, other people may pass them along. And here you have the ability to take a shower with Marilyn Monroe, right? And so we propose to do, for this one hotel in San Francisco, not only the Marilyn Monroe shower, but 36 different showers. So you get into the ability to do mass variation, mass customization, and people that go to this hotel post on Yelp as well as, Yelp as well as Expedia, right? And they share their story and their experience, like, hey, wow, I just went to a hotel and was in a Marilyn Monroe shower, right? And so they're telling the story. And that's what we want, because then we get into social networking. And then on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a super powerful tool, and I know that everyone's like, oh yeah, sure, I know LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, but in particular LinkedIn, I would say right now, I can't encourage it enough for everyone to not only have LinkedIn, but to really use it. It's a super tool, and it's still at a stage where it's, you can get a lot of organic reach, The Facebook and the Instagram, very difficult to get organic reach. I mean, some people are saying organic reach is dead, and but not in LinkedIn. So still there's a great opportunity. And you can see here, just in 4 days, right? 4 days, well, that's 10,000 views, 286 likes, reactions, comments, and then 14 reshares. This was just taken with an iPhone, right there. I saw a really great moment in the studio, we're working, and then just took the picture, right? I had no idea that this picture was going to have this kind of impact. So you kind of have to just go out there and expose yourself out there. If I were to make 10,000 flyers, do you know what? It would be a cost. This is at no cost, right? So whenever you have an opportunity to reach 10,000 people at no cost, you would want to jump on that, right? So there's nothing but, I would say, blue skies for LinkedIn, and really go overkill. It's better to post as much as you possibly can, but then you have to create the content. So you know, put your iPhones to work. Because if you start creating surfaces and making unique objects, people want to take pictures of them, and then want to take pictures of them in front of the objects, as you see here, right there. That's a KBIS right there. Someone taking a selfie. And over here's a mountain wall. that we made for a marijuana dispensary in Mammoth Mountain. And they're all gathering around it. So, and then if you keep telling the story, people keep sharing, and you keep making unique objects, other people will find out as well, and they'll want to tell that story as well. And here you have the wallpaper of the future from Fast Company, and Architectural Digest talks about uncovering world innovations in home and design. There you have Be Following Nature's blueprints, and then you have interior design. If you notice on here, right, it's really these iconic images that are helping to drive the attention. And then if you keep telling your story, watch what happens. You know, exotic car companies will very often come to you and say, hey, can we shoot in front of your house? Okay? And that's exactly what happened with McLaren. We've had a handful of car companies come and shoot from Porsche and so on and so forth. Specifically with solid surface, and I know there's lots of materials out here, and I've worked with a lot of materials, 15 years experience building, designing, constructing houses, worked with various materials, but the solid surface is really a super material, and although it's been 50 years, I really believe there's so much more to the awareness and the expansion of what this material can do. Really, I don't know what it can't do. I know what it does better than anything else, and so let's focus on those things, and then let's expand on that. Because what does solid surface do that other materials do not do, right? Well, it's formable, it's translucent, and it's carvable. Those are the three core principles or characteristics that it can do. So let's do all three at once. That's what I think, right? And you can see it in this image right here. Well, we have texture, we have translucency, and we have curvature, all in one, right? And how can that be expressed into a platform or a design language and then brought available to the design community so they can start expressing in those mediums, because otherwise they don't know it's available to them or how to actually achieve it. And I think we all know all three of those things are relatively pretty easy to do, you know that? I'm kind of wild and I like to, you know, be bold, right? But I also like to and push the envelope, but at the same time, you know, I'm a little bit reasonable. So, where else can we go? Well, I look at the cabinets, right? This is all textured, continuous, monolithic design, going from one side to the other. And then over here on this other picture, you can see a hood, right? A kitchen hood. Right? If you notice the countertop space, right? The countertop space is the same material, but the back wall is also another textured wall. So if you think about the amount of space that the wall surface and the vertical wall surface is, it's, you know, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times greater than the horizontal countertop space. But we can also go outside, right? Which is also remarkable. And we have two examples here of rain screen facades. You know, the one on the left is a, you know, $7 million house in Santa Monica. This is you know, maybe like a $30 million house. I'm from Los Angeles. Sorry. There's just the housing is extraordinary in terms of some of the builds that people do. Fortunately, I had a client that was very open-minded, right, and allowed me to do this because it's a big and bold and brave endeavor, right? So we achieved this, and that's been installed for almost a year now. They're thrilled. It's a work in progress. See, it's a work in progress, right? It's not finished, right? So it's okay to post the things that are not finished, and ultimately, when they get finished with their house, then I'll bring in the camera and we'll get that finished shot. But in the meantime, I have to tell the story. Oh, but also flooring. These are floors, right? And who would think of such a thing, right? Let's do textured flooring. Well, I wanted to try it, right? And so I tried it, and then I tried it again, and again, and again. And I kind of got it worked out, and it's really fantastic. This is actually my closet right here, my closet floor. It goes into my bathroom. I have about 2,500 square feet of solid surface textured flooring on my second floor. And the texture goes down the halls, it curves into bedrooms, it goes up the walls. Do you know what? People say, oh my God, how would you clean it, right? Or how would you know, how would it last? How would it endure? It's really remarkable. It's been about 3 years. I don't really see any special cleaning. If there's dust, you know, vacuum cleaners clean up dust. Dust is going to be somewhere. But really, what's also very unique is that the solid surface material is non-conductive. And the non-conductivity of it makes it feel very warm and on your feet. So you get a very tactile sensation on your feet, on your toes. It's a remarkable flooring solution, something that hasn't been pursued, but I think in certain conditions I would do it. Exterior patios, right? And then this is a massive, maybe 300 square foot wall, exterior patio in a house. And again, you know, the photography, just going out, okay, you know, gotta get a model, right? We got some Pellegrinos, some chairs, okay, and take a lifestyle shot. So a lot of it is based on, you know, kind of guerrilla tactics. Again, this is more research, a studio shot right here. And I was wondering, what if we take the texture, right, and we make a pedestal out of it, and then we get the 45-degree the corners, and we have the design wrap around the corner continuously, and here are the results. This is still in my studio right here. Now people want one of these, right, and they want them round, or they want them this way or that way. And these are fantastic, but they're very time intensive, right? Time intensive to do the corners. Okay, we've got exterior patio feature walls, right? So finding spaces where one would not necessarily think of creating a surface or design experience, such as outside patio, right? And so now you go ahead and beautify this one particular area where people would not have thought of doing that before. And then also, you know, solutions for the wet room. We have these beautiful walls here, and ultimately these walls needed to be finished. What would you have to put something on these walls, and something that's robust to handle a wet room environment. In this condition, we had the designer, architect, wanted to do something that was related to water. This is an indoor swimming pool. So we proposed doing the Great Wave, larger than the actual Great Wave painting. And if you look here, this is all puzzled, right? And this was installed by, not by a Korean or a solid surface fabricator, but by a stone setter, right? And the stone setter did an exceptional job. He practically did it by himself, one person. That's another story. But, so you end up having open source construction, which is very important. Because if you come up with these great ideas, but there's only 3 or 4 people in the world that can possibly install it, then it limits. And so we want to have design and user-friendly installation all come together. And that's another important component of digital fabrication. And we may have touched upon this, but the wall market finish industry is about a $50 billion global industry in the world, right? Where the solid surface market is about $2 billion, right? So looking at the vertical wall space as an opportunity, really as a blue ocean of area, we can just look around here and we can see what's on the walls, right? Well, after glass, there's lots of opportunity. And finding ways to create iconic surfaces. Again, back to the theme of mass variation. The high-end market, which I've noticed in Los Angeles, has a very strong appetite for the unique and iconic surfaces. They want to have something that's bespoke, something that maybe nobody's seen before, something that's original, something that's exclusive. But at the same time, they need robustness, reliability, and that's a perfect synthesis between the history of the material, as well as, and then how can we overlay design and expression on top of it to go ahead and provide design experiences. And you know, I really encourage to challenge your customers, right? Because very often they want leadership. And everyone loves design. Everyone thinks they're a designer and an architect deep down inside. But that doesn't mean they actually are, right? And they want to make stuff, but they actually can't. So I really encourage to challenge your customers' leadership, and then you know, the stories of beauty, because beauty has a value of its own that attracts people, and really we're in the beauty business. You know, and there's a fashion, there's a beauty element to what we're doing, because in the end of the day, it doesn't matter how robust and how long it's going to last. If it's ugly, nobody really wants it, or if it's a little bit blasé, people are like underwhelmed. They want to be wowed, right? They want to be wowed. And so the beauty has a strong value that's also, you know, that people really want. That's why they're coming to us, okay? Because if not, we can be in a mud hut, right? But we want to have that spectacular beauty. So documenting these and doing things that, and then being able to charge, right? Here's a custom texture that we made for, again, as an architect, and it was very expensive. We let them know before, but it was super expressive. And then you get into how texture is really an aesthetic in and of itself, right? And we're very sensitive to texture, the way our bodies read texture, almost on an instinctive level. And a little bit about the photography, and I just want to let everyone know, the photography is something that everyone struggles with. I know we have someone from Kohler here, right?
We do.
I mean,
We don't know who.
I've talked to
but
some
we do.
of the, top tile companies. They say the same thing. They say photography is the bane of our existence. You have to think this is a big company. Big companies, they struggle. They have to hire so many photographers because it's very difficult to get a good product shot. And you don't always get it right the first time. And you have to understand, so these are investments of time and money, but they're really worth it because we are in more of an image-based world than ever before. And it's only going to amplify, okay? We are at a level where people in general are looking at 100 to 200 images a day, okay? And so if you looked at an image last week and you saw it, well, now we have to come right back, and the bar is rising every day in terms of being able to produce beautiful images almost at scale to go ahead and continue to communicate to all our audience and our customers. And it's really, and there's a trend of the personalized, whether you're personalizing your Facebook page, your Instagram feed, you know, you're telling your personal story with images, and we're all doing it, we're all consuming it, and we have the opportunity for great design experiences. So in order to do this, we have to have variation, mass variation. And that's part of the qualities that the digital does, because in the digital world, you can make and remake and make so many variations of it, different sizes, different designs, and you can really communicate to somebody very specific. So you get into niche marketing. Even the Golden Gate Bridge, that was from San Francisco. Here is, again, a unique combination of texture, light, and customization, where the company gave me an image of a cornfield from an Iowa cornfield from the view of an airplane. Okay, and they said that was an image that really meant to them. And they said, okay, now make a big backlight wall. We want to use it for our display, launch of our company. So I said, sure, no problem. Right? And so that's pretty much what it looked like, right? And we made that for them and we shipped them off, but again, we took the time to go ahead and to kind of capture it, because as soon as it left our studio, there was no chance of ever really seeing it again. I don't know where it is now. So, wings on the wall, right? That's for a homeowner in Encino. And again, you know, the king of Dubai, right there, doing mock-ups and research. Before I went ahead and sent, you should have seen the versions before this, right? Before I went ahead and sent a file to Dubai to print out this massive wall, I figured, you know what, I better test this, because this is a pretty important figure, right? So I made just the face. I said, okay, let me just focus on the face, because it was 15 by 15. I wasn't going to make the whole wall in my studio and then redo it. So I just took the face, right? And the first version actually was the negative. So when we made it and backlit it, what you would see would be the negative of the face. So fortunately, we ran the test, right? And then we realized in order to do this, we would actually have to start off with the negative version of the image, so that when it went through our process and backlit, it would become into the positive, right? So again, you know, having fail-safe measures to, you know, fail on a small scale in order to not fail on a large scale, right? And then again, this is something I just took with my iPhone, an interesting object in terms of a light fixture, right? Fish, okay? You know, let's make something. There's someone in the world that loves clownfish, okay? and you know, maybe nobody here loves clownfish. Maybe, you know, most of the world doesn't like clownfish. But there's somebody out there that loves clownfish. So really, all I need to do is, if I can find the people that love clownfish, and I can show them this, for him or that person, or maybe it's, they're like, oh my God, I want that, right? Because it speaks to them. So that's connected to the mass variation. And there's somebody out there that loves something, only if we can create it, and then we can find how to connect to them. And that's what we want to do. We want to connect to as many people as possible. And then we're going to close on the art of puzzling, and I encourage lots of questions, so we have some time for that. And we'll watch a couple videos, and maybe you've seen how everything kind of puzzles together, but there is an assembly logic that's embedded into this. Questions, feel free to.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Two questions, actually. Is all the product that you work with half-inch thick, you laminated? And the second question is, say that, how long did it take on CNC to get?
Okay. Very common questions. Half-inch material. So I would say everything you saw was all done with half-inch material, right? And we go down about halfway. It's about a quarter of an inch. So it's really amazing if you think about how much expression can be just in that quarter of an inch. There's a whole universe right there, and that's incredible. On the time on the machine, we could go back in some of the earlier versions that I did. The time on the machine was insane, right? It could be multiple hours per square foot. I remember one surface we did, it must have taken a month to do, right? It was 10 by 10. So that was part of it. So as I became more fluent in understanding machining, material behavior, right, those times reduced. Now we're probably down to anywhere between 2 and 3 minutes a foot, right? And so most of what you saw was done on a super optimized CNC machine time, because if the machine time is too long, it becomes super expensive and not feasible. So yeah, you have to consider that.
How do you find the exterior durability, especially in high UV, high smog area, all this white 5 to 10 years down the road?
Do you know what? Fortunately, what's again remarkable about the material, I think there's a 10-year kind of color fade warranty that DuPont offers, right? On the exterior part for the UV. So, but then on top of that, I would say even in the worst condition, right? Maybe it's 5 years or 10 years down the road or even more, you could always just go ahead and buff it or sand it, because it's pure white underneath, and that's one of the benefits of solid surface. It's solid color all the way through. So I don't really see any issues with that. And there's lots of research, in Europe and other parts of the world, they've used Corinth on exteriors for a few decades, I believe. Yeah, great results.
The lotus flower that you made?
So is that going to be the floor of somebody's?
No, if that was going to be for a shop, right? That's going to be for a shop, so it will be tilted, it will be vertical. Okay. And we put it on the floor for ease of photographing it, But I have had people say, hey, could I do this on the floor backlit? And I think that was probably the one time I said, I'm not doing that, right? So I do have boundaries.
It was amazing.
What else? Anything else?
So what kind of software do you use?
So we created our own software, right? Our own scripting software for the last 2 years. It's patent pending, right? And that really helps us get to the next point, which is CAM, right? So there's CAM software, and then there's the machine part. And I would say the CAM world, we use Rhino Cam, we use Alpha Cam. I would say, most of the CAM softwares out there, I'd say about 50% read our files, because there's 3-dimensional files, there's 3-dimensional DWG files. And so it's about interpreting them and getting them into the CAM, and then they get post-processed. So I would say the CAM is one area that some people have CAM software that doesn't actually read a 3-dimensional line.
that early image of the house, how did you connect that, all those panels to the exterior of the house?
Screws. On that one, it was with screws, right? And it was using the lap technique, right? So, you know, you have the first part up there, and you start from the bottom and you screw, and then the next part laps over, so that's how the screws were concealed, right? So it's very easy, you know, screw kind of connection. Anything else?
Do you ever have an issue, like, what if your wall's not exactly flat, or?
Yes, yes. Well, there's no such thing as like level of perfectly square walls. So you do have to adjust for that, whether it's, you know, scribing on the inside corners towards the ceiling. And then also, you know, my pieces, when they arrive, there's some buckling and flexing, right? But everything flexes right back, so you kind of have to level the face and press on it and make sure it's really level, because it's super sensitive to light. So you saw how much expression was going on with just a quarter inch of the texture, right? So if something's sticking out a 16th, do you know what? It's going to actually kind of, it's going to stand out, right? So there's just different strategies, really having a good set of eyes and having some good lighting to kind of really reveal and show any sort of unlevelness. But despite the wall, you still have to kind of level the face. And I'd say that's probably the area that requires the most technique, right? You have to be a good builder to do that.
So what do you use to?
Hot glue and shims, right? So shims bridge it over the joint, and then you press down and you kind of just hot glue it and keep it right there while the silicone is setting in the back, and then we'll just like lock it into place. Go ahead. We've done these, you know, we've done these walls. No, we haven't all installed all these walls, my team and I, right? My team, they're mostly carpenter background, not solid surface fabricators. But we've had carpenters, stone setters, flooring fabricators across the country and the world install my surfaces with great results. Yeah.
How did you come up with all this, and what's your background, and what?
You know, well, my background is very strong in computers, whether it was with digital editing and graphics, photography, animation, and then combined with construction, right? So building houses and a licensed contractor, and really unifying those two kind of disciplines. But at the same time, you have to have a vision, right? So you have to have a design vision. And the design vision was, how do you create large-scale, uninterrupted texture and surfaces without any visible connections? So without any grout lines, without any visible joints. And then to have the design be able to go however creative as you wish. So if you wanted to go down one side of the wall and then have it compress and return to a floor, or actually evolve into a countertop, to be able to have that level of expression was the key vision to drive, you know, all of, let's say, the underbelly, the logic behind it.
So like translucent walls that you did, like when you connect usually here, you see shadows in translucency when you try to glue it together.
Yes.
How do you overcome that?
Great question. That's actually the skill right there, the technique. What you do is you apply the adhesive after, okay? And you have to have the lights on. So what you would do is like you get these 7 kind of like puzzle pieces all come together. Once they come together, you don't bond them. Because if you bond them, there's going to be too much glue that will seep behind and it will create a shadow, right? So you just don't, you leave them unbonded. And then you just apply the adhesive with the lights on, and you kind of have to use your eye, right? If you stick on too much, it's going to be more shadow. If you stick in too little, more light's going to bleed. So I would say that's a little bit of a, kind of like a craft of how would you apply the adhesive. Really, the adhesive is really just blocking out the light to match the same translucency as all the other areas. And it's pretty manageable.
I think just a comment I'll add to what Mario does is that the human eye looks for vertical and horizontal lines in seating, but in fact the seam's not straight, it follows the pattern. So it almost disappears when you build it, it almost disappears without any kind of adhesive at all. It just locks together. So
right.
When you see it in large scale, your brain wants to see a line like it does that wall panel on the side of this building, where you see your eyes going, where's the joint? And it's in the wave,
Right.
so it helps it disappear.
But with the light will push through even the most minuscule joint spacing. So that's how you would resolve that.
But it isn't fabricator joints that you think of fabrication of.
Correct, yeah. It's puzzle joints, right? And the joints are following the texture and the design, right? Anything else, sir?
So for this group, as they come across projects and see this product as an opportunity, how do they work with you, or how do they?
You guys can always reach out to me, if you have anything challenging or anything that is that would seem to be appropriate for your customers, your clients. You guys can reach out to me, and we can either I can make it shipped to you, or you guys can make it on your machine. Sometimes there is a little bit of a setup time. I've noticed sometimes. I've worked with different CNC machine. I just really say like CNC operators in their machines. Sometimes it can go very quick, right? And sometimes it's actually a little bit more of a challenge, depending on their skill, depending on the software that they have. So I'd say it's 50-50. But absolutely, ultimately, we want to go ahead and expand this, and you can offer it to them as an expansion of their design language. And we have a lot of like standard lines to choose from. Just need the wall dimensions. If you guys ever have any big and wild ideas, you're welcome to present them to me, and I'll try to take them on.
What about the lighting in the back? How do you, when you fasten it, or how are you fastening to the wall to get the light to shine through?
3 inches. So I'd say there's lots of ways to do it, but the most value way to do that is to allow a 3-inch gap. So 3-inch gap with LED strips about 6 inches off center. What I found is that having 6 inches off center and a 3-inch spacing will give you a very even balanced glow, right? You could always add more lights, but adding more lights drives up the electrical, drives up the gear cost. So that's a 3-inch gap. Now, then you have to stiffen the wall, because these are large walls, right? And if not, they'll be flexing in the middle if it's like 10 feet high. So you actually have acrylic plates, right? So you just take acrylic, clear acrylic, and you can make them in the shape of a U, and then you can stiffen them like that, and they will not create a shadow. So that way, you stiffen it with the acrylic plates. Then there's other ways to connect it, whether you connect it on top or bottom, at a ledge, right? You can have mechanical connections. You can have various ways of accessing, because you do want to have the option to access it in the event that you ever had to change the lights. Do you know that? So, but I'd say there's, 2 or 3 ways to have access there.
So do you adhere to the acrylic plates, or how do you attach the acrylic?
Oh, the acrylic U plates? Do you know what? Let's say they were shaped as a U, right? And I have lots of images I could show you. Shaped as a U, well, you could just screw those into the wall, right? And then the top U part, I don't even glue it to the back, because really I'm more concerned about people like leaning into the wall like this. So we just want to have it stiff, right? So someone wants to like lean into the wall, it's not going to go. It's not going to bow on you if it's, let's say, 10 feet high, right, or 8 feet high, right? You want to push in the middle, right? So those acrylic plates are very easy to make. You can make them, you can buy them. Lots of ways to skin a cat on that. Just make sure the wall doesn't,
Then
buckle
you use
into
the
the wall.
LED plates, or you strip?
The strip lights. So you could use the plates. The plates are expensive. You're doing something that's 100 square feet. Just the material to buy LED panel light, could be $50 to $70 a square foot. So you'll spend more money on the lights than you will on anything else. But if you go with the strip lights, you can get every 6 inches. You can do really nice balanced spacing right there, and that would work